All right, so I'll start it off. Okay.
Give me
All right,
one
guys,
call.
this is another edition of the Phone Warriors podcast, and we have a extremely special guest and what I would consider the OG of prospecting at the highest level, where he started his career 15, 20 years ago. And you see this, and he is 100% the master that I've seen play out over the years. Sean Shallis, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to actually learn about your group. It's funny how, I'll tell you like a funny little story is when I was a kid, my uncle had one of the pool halls in Staten Island in New York, right? What most people didn't realize, for 25 years, he had the biggest poker game in Staten Island for 25 years. And if I said to him now, like, hey, did you know they legalized poker? He would probably roll over in his grave. Um, because that was his living until it became legal. So when I saw your guys' group and somebody said, "Oh my God, these guys get together on a group and they prospect together," I'm like, "Holy cow, we've been doing that for like 20 years."
Yeah.
And it was like when we first talked, you were like, "Hey, do you prospect at all?" And I said, "Yeah, just a little bit."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and actually that's like one of my first questions of today is like, I think that the biggest value that I would love we have a lot of newer agents, as we know, since COVID that have come into not only the Phone Warriors group, but also into real estate in general. And I
Right.
think that in especially the last 5 years, for whatever reason, there's been this like miss of what is really working in real estate supposed to be. And I
Right.
think that people get confused with social media, different other aspects of it. But like in Sean's way, because you spawned off, and we'll get to that later, but you spawned off, in my opinion, just a plethora of these massive agents in the Hudson County market where I service that I've seen. And I'm
Yep.
like, well, who was like the original? And I know it all reverted back to Sean, but like, what would you suggest is like what do you consider the real work in real estate to be?
It's funny. And by the way, thank you so much for everything you said. I mean, I was the guy behind the scenes, really. I worked in Hudson County, and you know that market, right?
Mhm.
So I worked in that market for probably 12, 13 years, did 7,500 transactions, and most people didn't even know what I looked like, because I worked in my home office and I basically prospected and grinded. But I do remember one thing that I never forgot, and it's a woman named Kathy Anderson. I have to give her credit for it. Kathy actually was my coach for a while, because my coach at the time was Mike Ferry, not Tom or Matt, the OG Mike Ferry in the 1990s. And I said to Mike, I go, "You don't understand, Mike. I work in a really small market. It's like 14 blocks. By the way, it was 14 blocks long back then. It wasn't 17 blocks long like it is now. I don't know how they did that, but it is. There was 200, there was 210 bars, 3,700 realtors, 53 offices in a mile square.
Yeah.
And I went to Mike and I said, I need a coach that understands that. And he goes, "Oh, I got the perfect lady for you." I go, "Who's that?" He goes, "Kathy Anderson." He goes, "She'll do 150 units in Vermont, where there's only 350 units in the entire MLS." I go, "Say that again." Right. And so I really was trained by some of the best of the best. And I got very, very lucky that Kathy said to me, she goes, "Write this down and never forget it." I'm like, "Okay." And she goes, "Write it down vertically." And I would recommend, if you're listening to this, you should write it down vertically. I still have it on my wall. And if anybody ever talks to me, they'll hear this. It's called PLAN, PLAN. And then I added a little thing to it after 25 years, but PLAN is prospect, lead, follow up, appointments, negotiate, in that order, by the way.
Mhm.
And then my addition to that was rinse, repeat, do it again.
Mhm.
Right. And do it for the rest of your life. If you want to have a job in real estate. And really what it came down to was, what my coaches taught me to do was spend 80% of your time doing those four things, and you'll make a living, and no matter what the market does. And by the way, I've been in every economy, every market you can imagine. I've told you this, and I share this with Rich, and Rich knows my family. I mean, he can validate this. I woke up one day after spending 400, 350, $400,000 to build a real estate office in Jersey City, in downtown Jersey City. I opened up the Christie's Great Estates affiliate in 2007. And against all my coaches told me don't do it. And I was like, "Oh no, I know what I'm doing." Yeah. Well, the day after I opened my office, my income went from $80,000 a month to eight overnight, like literally like that. Except that I was still spending $53,000 a month on my expenses between my personal and my business. So I had no choice. So what did I do is I went back to basics and I actually wrote out something called the 10X personal success formula for myself. And that between that and thank God there was like an old closed down Spanish church across the street from my office that when I thought I was going to go jump out a window, I figured out I was on the first floor. That wasn't going to help me any. So I literally walk across the street and the guy said to me one day, he goes, you know, we're closed, right? And I go, yeah, I know. He goes, but if you need to sit there, you just stay there as long as you want. I go, okay. And I literally, I sat in a pew and I'm not afraid to say it. As a grown man, I was crying because I watched the market disappear. And I was a ranger in the army, so I just refused to give up. I didn't know the word bankruptcy. I didn't understand the word quit. I didn't understand the word try. You either showed up and you did it or you didn't, you know. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
And when did you start, by the way, Sean? This whole
1996.
96.
Yep.
Okay.
And ironically enough, um, in the first my first year in real estate, and as you know, you can make a living doing rentals in Hoboken. I did about 75 rentals in the first year and 25 transactions part time. And John LaBarbera, who's still there, owns LaBarbera Realty, took me in his office and he goes, you see all those people sitting out there? And he sat in his office, which his office faces out over the rest of the office. It's like glass doors, right? You see all those people? I go, yeah. He goes, I'm paying you more this month than I paid them for an entire year. And they've been here for 20 years. You've been here for an hour and a half. He goes, you need to quit your day job. I go, oh, I can't do that. I got benefits, you know. And instead of giving me my check for like the next month, instead of giving me a check for like 17,000, he gave me a check for like 10. And I go, you have, I don't know, I know you think you're a rock star. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I'll have somebody come whack you if you don't give me the rest of my money. And he's like, no, 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 no. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, you told me that you would quit if you had benefits. And I go, yeah. He goes, I'm taking 3 years worth of benefits and I'm going to put it in the bank for you. You're quitting your job today. He goes, you're the best I ever seen. And I go, I'm not the best. I'm just the most disciplined.
Mm.
I really, by the way, at that point in my career in 96, I wasn't good.
Mm.
I was just doing what my coaches said. Get on the phone every day,
Mm-hmm.
call 30 people and let them know you're in the real estate business and ask if they want to buy, sell, or invest in a home.
Mm. And
And
were
that
you
was it.
also were you were you with MFO at that time?
I would, you know, it's funny story is I, for the first year, I did it on the seat of my pants, but I knew everybody in Hoboken because I was a professional drinker. So I've been thrown out of every bar at least twice. And you know, and if you're from Hoboken or you know the market there, you would understand that. I mean, it's literally a marketplace of 210 bars and 240 policemen.
Mm-hmm.
So if that puts it in perspective for you, but you know, after the first 6 months, Dean, I actually went to my broker and I said, "Hey, Warren, I need your help on to do a contract." And he goes, just keep doing rentals, kid. You're doing great. When you do a contract, you let me know. And now I'm in bear in mind, my cell phone was tied to like a car battery back then. It's 96, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my elevator mechanic maintenance outfit on a bus. It's like the jitney coming into Weehawken. And I'm yelling in the phone, and the people around me are like, "Don't speak English." We're all like, "Oh my god, that guy's crazy. He's gonna blow the bus up," right? And I'm literally screaming and going, "Dude, I sold 2 houses over the weekend. I need to know how to do a damn contract. If you can't do it, I'll figure it out." That was on the way into work. On the way out, back then, by the way, back then we didn't have audible.com. We didn't have all that stuff. You went to a bookstore. It's this place where they actually have books on the shelf and you buy them. And because I'm ADHD, I found the smallest book on the bookshelf. What's funny is, you know what that book was? How to Develop a Six-Figure Income by Mike Ferry.
Ah, oh,
I read the book, and here's the best part. I read the book. I put it on my desk. One of my now one of my coworkers came in the office as she was my mortgage lender at the time, came in and she goes, "Hey, those guys are doing an event up in upstate New York next week." I go, "Dude, I can't take a day off. If I take a day off, it's like $300. I don't get paid. I'm in the union." She goes, "Sean, you make like $4 grand last week. I know because I actually signed the paperwork for your closings and I brought you the checks. Quit, take the day off." I went to a productivity school. Matt Ferry it was the first one he ever did, by the way, upstate New York. And I show up thinking I did 25 units part time. I'm a rock star. Larry Zach stands up and goes, "Yeah, I set 10 appointments a week. I cancel 3. I go on 5. I take 3. And I make like 3 or I don't know, like last year I made like 8 or 900,000.
this is the
Chris Lane stands up and goes, "Yeah, last month we did about 9 transactions. We listed 14." And I'm like, what? Right. So at the break, I realized like, oh my God, I am a very big fish in a very, very, very small pond. And I walk up to Matt and I go, dude, I know your dad must have been great when he was alive. And Matt goes, what are you talking about? Bear in mind, this is like 1996, right? And if I find the book, it's the funniest thing. If you look at the back of the book, it's Mike Ferry with an afro, the gold chains like he came out of like Studio 54, and some like the 1970s look. But that book, honest to God, that book changed my life.
Hmm.
Because I bear in mind I was in the military, I was a ranger in the army, which is like special forces.
Hmm.
If you gave me the instructions, I just did what it said. I didn't know better. I was obviously coachable. I just, I did what the book said.
Hmm.
Wow.
By the way, what did the book say?
I was about to ask you, what did
Prospect,
the book say?
prospect, follow up, negotiate. Prospect, follow up, appointments, negotiate in that order.
Wow. And would you say that scripts and dialogues, helped you out with becoming a top agent?
So when I did coaching for years, I still do coaching. Now as a more, by the way, obviously I retired from real estate sales about 2 years ago. I put my license in referral because people were afraid I was going to compete with them and all that stuff. And now what I do is I'm a mortgage loan officer for one of the fifth largest bank in the United States. And in that position now, what I do is I coach my realtor partners and help them to raise their game and help them to. We had that conversation, Rich, right? And I said, I know you have partners, I know you have mortgage people, but I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to change that. I want to add another 20 or 30% to your business by just adding something you may or may not be doing, or maybe doing it a little better with the way we did it. And people say, well, what do you know? Well, I don't know. I did like 75, 100 units a year with two people. Never bought a deal. I'll say that again. Never bought a deal. I never paid for a Zillow lead, never paid a referral fee. And we would do 75, 100 deals a year. And we did it, by the way, what is the secret? The script, which is what you asked me. And people would say, well, does the script really work? It's like playing football without a helmet if you're not using a script.
Mhm.
And what's funny is I went to a big red company, right? After working for a yellow company in New Jersey, and you can figure that out. When I got there, the people doing the $1 million home said, oh, the circle prospecting script that's in that blue book, that one that goes along the lines of, hey, Rich, how are you? My name is Sean Chalice. I just want to let you know we just sold the house in your neighborhood. It was a 2 bedroom, 2 bath. It sold for over $400,000. And I was just wondering, when do you plan on moving? Right. And the joke was, oh my God, that doesn't work in our market. It's $1 million. We're talking $1 million people. That doesn't work. And I go, of course it doesn't work. And bear in mind, I'm not going to point people out, but they would do 100 deals a year at $1 million a piece. They're still doing it. And with 25 people in a team, but they would go, bear in mind though, is I'm sure you guys know this, and you talk about it on your group, is voice inflection, which is one of the three things. It's how fast, how many times, how many people is building a business. And then when you're talking to somebody, it's the standing up, the energy, right? 50% of it is your body language, the speed at which you say it at, and the rate of speed, the pace, and then the tonality that you deliver it at. And if I say, Rich, when do you plan on moving? And I drop my voice, I'm picking a fight with you. And that's when the person picks up the phone and goes, what's it to you? Why are you calling me? Oh my God. And people will, how many of your people will say, every time I ask them that, they fight with me? That's because you're dropping your voice. And even to this day, when I say, when do you plan on moving? I take my arm and I go like this because my coaches taught me to have an upswing when I say it. And in order for me to force myself to have an upswing, if I raise my finger or I raise my arm, even if I do that naturally, it forces me to raise my hand, my voice at the end of that script. So that converts, by the way, that's a 300 to 400% difference in somebody using the same exact script.
So what you're saying, Sean, is basically what I'm hearing you say is that you can get leverage outside of hiring people just by the skill set that you improve upon on a daily basis.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head. Is the problem we're having in this industry. I should say problem. The misconception is the more people I have, the more money I make. What most people don't realize, like when I was trained to be a MAPS coach, I became the group coach, like the team's coach, right? And after 6 months, I went and I dismantled my team, and my team leader at the red company said, "Oh my God, why would you do that? You're the team coach. You should be expanding." And I go, "Do you know that I deal with the top 10 teams in the Northeast right now? And they don't have more than an 18% bottom line return to the investment. Their net return to their income is 18%." And I go, with a team of three, we have a 65% return. That means that we can actually make 4 times as less and take home the same amount of money or more with less aggravation. So, Dean, you're absolutely right. Jay Abrahams is a great guy. If you've never heard of him or studied him, he talks about the Parthenon, which is, the Greek Parthenon, right? And when I met him, he sat us down and he said, and by the way, he's the only guy I've ever met talks faster than me, and his brain goes faster than mine, even after the Ritalin. Like, it's hard to keep up with him. And he said, "How much, how many times, how many people?" And he goes, "I don't care if you're selling buggy whips or you're selling houses or you're selling people on joining your team. How much, how many times, how many people, how much is each one? How many people you got to talk to, or how many times you got to go present, and how many times you're going to do it." Right. And what's funny is, if you think about here's a great situation we just did with the people. I just had a graduating class of our first group 30-day prospecting challenge, right? And the girl who's great, if I said to her, "Here, read the script," she'd read it verbatim, like literally like that. Most coachable girl I've ever met in my life, and she's awesome. Okay, but she said, "Sean, I'm only comfortable with making just listed, just phone calls, just sold phone calls." I said, and that was the first week, and I said, "Okay." I said, would you consider a better option?" She goes, "Yeah, sure." I go, "Do you like to go shopping? You said you like to go dancing. You like to go shopping, right?" She goes, "Yeah, of course." I said, "If I could show you how to go dancing more and work less, would you be interested in that?" "Well, yeah." So you guys know numbers. How many phone calls can I make an hour doing just a regular phone call?
When picking up the phone is dialing hand.
Whether you're dialing it by hand or you're dialing Mojo, I don't care if you're using like osmosis. How many people can you get on the phone in an hour?
Right now, no more than 10 to 15.
Eight to 12 is the number.
I'm 8 to 10. Yeah.
15 if you're calling just listed, just sold, and if you're the best in the business and you read a script. If you don't, 5 to 6.
Mhm.
How many contacts do your teams? Because I know you guys both operate huge teams, great teams, and you guys are experienced and have, I'm going to say higher than better conversions. How many contacts they need to make to just a circle prospecting call, or just listed, just sold is what I called it, before they get somebody who is warm, going to do something in 3 to 6 months?
For me, my numbers were one out of every 100.
What about yours, Rich?
Yeah, mine's probably a little bit higher.
For a just sold script, by the way.
So just listed, just sold, that number should be between 50 and 70, depending on how skilled your team is. And that's just from my numbers. We're working with, I don't know, hundreds of agents. And by the way, that's after coaching them for a while. They usually show up at 150 to 200 and they burn out. Because here, think about what I just said now. So you want me to come in, Sean, and get on the phone, and I can make 10 contacts an hour. And I need, by the way, the average agent, not you guys probably have more than a 50% closing ratio when you show up. The average agent has a 32% closing ratio. Let's call it 25 to be safe in this market, right? Because they're competing. So I'm gonna do real simple math. How many if I get 50 to 1 and I get 1 out of 4, if I get 1 out of 4 of my appointments, I get a listing out of it. How many hours is it taking me to get to one listing? So 4 times 50 is 200. 200. How many hours is that? 20 hours. It's 20 hours just to get teed up for me to show up to those appointments. And by the way, that's if you're the best in the business and you're a machine. So what I said to this woman is, I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. The reason why I became the for sale by owner and the expired expert in Hoboken market, at one point in Hoboken, if there was 10 for sale by owners, I would list 4 of them every month. And then Patrick will list the other 4. I swear to God. It was, and then every once in a while, Michael Klein started showing up and he would take 1 or 2 from us. And we were like, and by the way, our favorite script, I told you this when I met with you. What's the favorite script I ever had? Hey, Dean, I really, you know what? They really loved you. They thought you were great, but I just want to let you know, they decided to hire me for the agent to list a house for sale. But I told them you're a great agent and you probably do really have somebody that wants to get in there. Hey, if you want to get in there first, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
We'll get you in first. By the way, that was me calling the other agent that had the appointment before me, and I watched you walk out. or I saw you sitting in the car waiting to go in after me.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, I mean, your efficiency. So here's the other number. How many contacts do you have to talk to get to a for sale by owner and expired to get an appointment?
Well, for at least for me is one out of 10. I'm
How about
getting
you,
an
Rich?
expired listing. Yeah, for that.
Right, Rich?
Yeah, similar numbers.
Same number?
Yeah, we built expired FISBOs is how we built the business.
Right. Okay, so it's 1 out of 10. So
What is
1 out of 10, and let's say,
78% closing ratio.
well, let's say it's 1 out of 10, and let's use the same closing ratio because we're going to say that you're not the one showing up all the time. It's one of your team members, or maybe you, when they get a live body and it's worth you showing up. If you use the same matrix though, 1 out of 10, and I only got to make 10 phone calls, and out of 10, I'm going to show up and I'm going to list 1 out of 4.
2 hours.
You know, all of a sudden it's 40 hours versus 200.
Yeah, you keep.
And by the way,
time.
when I would do this training for that big yellow company, they would have me do it once in a while. I would say to them, I go, there's a reason why you're burning through agents is because they don't get to success. They're grinding, and then they stop in between the 20 hours. So now that 20 hours turns into 40. And then, you know, and bear in mind, how does your average person prospect? We got 8 to 10 leads. We call 1 to 8 today because we feel great, right? We didn't have COVID like Dean. So Dean, thanks for joining us and being vertical. But let's say now you get COVID, you're down with COVID. So you call like the first 3. Next day you call the first 6. Then you go and you call all 10 on Friday because you feel good. And on Friday, the guy number 10 says, well, I haven't heard from you. So I actually listed my house with Rich.
Happens.
All the time. So I don't know if that answers your question about efficiency, but hopefully.
So, okay, but so let's actually go into that because there's a couple questions that I was unpacking in my head as you're talking. But
and I have some too myself.
So Sean, would you recommend, so this is one thing that I've even told my team, because I feel like a lot of newer agents into the game, they don't even know how to have a real conversation around real estate.
Okay.
And so at some point though, like to that girl that said that she was a coachable person in your, training program, everything like that. Do you feel though that was she like a newer agent or was she like a veteran already?
No, she was a fairly new agent, 3, 4.
Okay, good.
But bear in mind, she was in sales before.
Okay.
So, so help me understand what a conversation around real estate is.
So as an example, if they start, hey, well, what do you think the value of my house is? Or if they start saying, well, what's your commission? Or they start asking different questions around it, just your nuance of how to handle a conversation. Oh, I have a friend in the business. What I'm saying is there any value as opposed to getting burnt out, right? To having circle prospecting calls and go that route more up front as you're a new agent? Or would you recommend to agents going the route? You see what I'm saying?
It's a great question, by the way. So there's 3 ways that I use to train people to get on the phone. Well, actually 4, but the 4th one really isn't duplicatable or repeatable. So I'll tell you the 4th one first. When I built my office, I put the administrative people in the front and I put a call center in the back, and you had to be in the office by 7:45. And if you weren't, we locked the door and we told you come back tomorrow or don't come back at all. When you came in the office, there was 7 40-inch high workstations with a phone on each one, a keypad. Bear in mind, this was before Mojo. So we would dial with the left hand, put your finger on it, let it ring 3 times, dial with the right hand, put your finger on it, let it ring 3 times until somebody picked up. And every once in a while, somebody would pick up on both phones and you'd read them the script. And people said, what do you do then? You read them the script until somebody hangs up. And when Dean hangs up, I keep dialing with that other hand, trying to find the next person. And when they pick up, I hang up on them and I put my finger on that number. So when I finish talking to Rich, I call Dean right back. Oh my God, Dean, I can't believe that. So I lost the call. I want to make sure we talk. It's the same thing that Mojo does, except we did it manually. By the way, England is the guy's name, Dave England, who built Mojo. modeled it on a guy named Froy and me and a bunch of other people on the way we prospect. So to answer that question more directly though, is what I always did and what I still do is I have new people, you know, when you go for a run and you're going to run a 5K today, do you just jump out and put your sneakers on and go running? No, you walk a little bit, you stretch, you move your hips around a little bit, you stretch for 5 minutes, you may jog for a couple of minutes, and then you start running. If I tell a new person, get on the phone and start calling expireds, guess what? That person will not be in the business very long, because that's like me taking
That's
you
why I'm saying this.
into a fist
Yes.
fight and going, here, let Dean punch at you for a while.
Correct.
No, so what you do is you take those people, you take that group of people. First of all, if they don't know it, there's an app called it's an app called Covey, Covee, and it actually will tell you how many contacts are in your phone.
Hmm.
So I always tell people, my joke is always when I do coaching with people, I always say the same thing. And I'll ask you guys this. I think we talked about this. If I took your
Yeah.
phone, I started dialing through your phone, how many people can I dial through at $100 a piece that don't know you're in the real estate business?
Hmm.
People are like, no. I talk to my past clients all the time. I go, okay, great. Give me your phone. I'm going to start calling them and asking them if they know you're in the real estate business. If they don't, you're going to pay me $100. How many people can I call before I dial through your bank account? Right. And then what's interesting is that's the easiest phone call to make. Hey, how you doing, Rich? I just want to let you know I transitioned in the real estate business. I'm just wondering, we got a big contest in our office. I'm just wondering, who do you know that may need our help? But you're brand new, Sean. I know, but I work with Dean and Rich, and they've been in the business for 30 years combined. We have the skills and we have the technology and we have exactly what you'll need to get you to where you want to go. Let me ask you again, who do you know that needs our help, either in your church, your family, or at work, or in the gym? Who should we talk to? Right. So that script, anybody can do. Next script. Hey, how you doing? We just sold a house in your area. Hey, how you doing? We have a buyer in your area. Hey, how you doing? We're having an open house. We'd love to invite you. By the way, the open house script is not, hey, we have an open house. We'd love to invite you. It's, hey, Rich, how are you, man? Dean and his wife down the street, you know them. They're selling their house. They wanted me to invite you personally to the open house we're having on Thursday. Is there anybody else we should invite so we get them in there before everybody else? Because it's going to be a bidding war. We already know that. By the way, what did I just do? One, I created value. Number two, I created a relationship between you and Dean. I assumed that I used assumptive language. Then what I did is I used future pacing by saying to you, you already know it's going to be a bidding war. And then the last question is, by the way, what do you think the last question is?
Plan on selling.
Well, we know that house is going to go to a bidding war. If I have buyers from that one, you want me to bring them to your house too? All right.
Oh.
So
Nice
should.
Do you recommend the database really first is what I'm hearing as a conversation opener for newer agents that are getting into the game, as opposed to circle prospecting or something like more colder?
So it's a deeper question, but I'll give you a simpler answer.
Okay.
The Red Book, right, that Gary Keller wrote, right? Millionaire Real Estate Agent. If you haven't read it, read it. It's a good book. Great content. But what's funny is, like anything else, they revised it. My coach has always said, Sean, how big is the group of people you know? And I'd be like, well, it's like, I don't know, 3,000 people, Tony. How many people do you not know? I go, oh, that's like a billion people, dude. He goes, okay, which number's bigger? He goes, if you call the people you know, you're going to be 1 out of 15. Is people are going to either know somebody or want to do something in the business. He goes, 1 out of 75 to 100 are going to be people you don't know. Right? Which one of those is easier? Okay, I'm a numbers guy. What they changed was, though, and this was a nuance of social media, technology, awareness, and instant gratification, and the speed at which information travels. So what did they change? They changed it to where it's people that I know and people that know of me. So why do people on Instagram with 1 million followers make gazillions of dollars in real estate and they can't spell cat? Because they have a bunch of people that know of them. When they call them, or when somebody on their team calls them, they go, oh, I know that name. So to answer your question, if they're calling your database and the people they're calling are aware of Dean's ability to do whatever, be the best of the best, that will help them to make an easier transition of a phone call. But I think, but here's the other piece of it is, years ago, the model was you on the island by yourself. Then you hire an administrator, or you hire a virtual assistant or whatever, right? Virtual assistants, by the way, didn't exist back then. I hired like some of the first ones from my Outdesk, like 20 years ago. And the reality is that assistant, right, was your personal assistant, for argument's sake. And then what do you think you hired? Who do you hire next?
Either an agent or an ISA.
An ISA or a buyer agent, right?
Yeah.
Right, wrong. So here's the reason why, and you hit on it a second ago. I can either hire my assistant, who's going to do all my stuff, keep me out of the books. By the way, back then it was, I had my operation was, I had a personal assistant that was also my what I'm going to call my listings manager, and then I had a transaction coordinator. One did the front end, the other did the back end, right? Which is pretty common sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I figured out though was, what I really needed was a sales support person. So what I learned, and then eventually, KW started training people that way, is the first person in the door is your assistant. The second person in the door is another assistant, except that assistant's job, and their only job in life, is to sit next to you or sit on the Zoom with you if they're virtual. And every time I talk to Rich and I say, hey, Rich, you know what? That's a great conversation. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday at 4. I read you the pre-qual script and you say, okay, great. We're all excited. We're going to go. We're singing Kumbaya. And in the last part of the pre-qual script, what does it say? It says, hey, Rich, I'm going to send you out a packet of information. If you get a chance to review it, take 15, 20 minutes to review it, and I'll see you at 4 o'clock. And by the way, we're going to drop a hard copy of it off at your house. So when you get home, it'll be sitting there on your stoop. And then we'll also be sending you an email with it. And you'll probably even get a video from either me or my assistant just to introduce ourselves face to face. Okay, great. I'll talk to you then. By the way, why would we go through all those steps? How many times do you have to touch somebody to close them? How many times do you have to touch them to get them to say yes?
Good 7, 8 times.
7, 8 times. So I called you on the phone. After I got you to say yes once, I said, hey, can I ask you a few questions before I come out to see you? That's number 2. Number 3 is I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to send you an email with a bunch of information. That's number 3. My assistant's going to drop it on your doorstep. And by the way, when they dropped it on the doorstep, they would take a picture of them putting it in the doorstep and them standing in front with my shirt that said the Shouse Group. And then they would text it to you saying, hey, just want to let you know it's here. Right. And they would put me and them on a group chat. That's 5. Number 6, they would get the hard copy of the email. Number 7, my assistant would call them in a half hour before. Hey, Sean, just want to let you know he's on his way from his other appointment. Can't wait to meet with you. If there's any questions that he needs to understand, if you want to tell me, I'll text them to him. So when he gets there, that'll be the first thing he's going to talk about before he lists your house for sale. By the way, when I show up to your house, I'm not showing up unless you're 70%, 75% closed.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great. I mean, yeah, that's power. But when you say it like that, I think that wraps the whole pre-qualification process down precisely the way it's supposed to.
Right, but if you have a team member that's doing that call, they need to understand the whole thing. They can't just be on a microcosm island by themselves making calls and not understand how that all fits in. Yeah. Like you said, if the girl doesn't understand real estate, and by the way, I just said this in a meeting yesterday. So, and I said, here's what you need to do over the next, going into the next year. Figure out what your ideal client profile is. I like to work with, I speak 2 languages. I don't, but the guy I was working with, young guy, Spanish, speaks Spanish fluently. And he said, I want to work with the Spanish community because I want to educate them. I want to help them to get out of financial illiteracy, right? I said, okay, great. So what's interesting is we talked about the market and understanding the market. And one of the people said, oh, but you have to spend the time to learn the market. And I said, no, you don't. Because in any one of the scripts that you guys use, which I'm pretty sure you use the same ones I did for 20 years because they work. By the way, if you guys aren't listening to this, or you are listening to it and you're not seeing this, if you don't believe the scripts work, I've made millions of dollars using the scripts, working a 40 to 45 day week. And I never believe they work. Use the script. By the way, use the script verbatim. The further I got away from the script, the less money I made. The more I got on the script, the more money I made. So that guy, to go back to that thing for 1 second is, I need to know the market. That's the analytical person speaking, right? Rich, tell me where in the just listed, just sold script it says, oh, by the way, I sold 15 homes in that neighborhood. By the way, did
Very
you know?
beginning of it. Yeah,
Oh, by the way,
exactly.
did you know where the deli is that they have the best? By the way, did you know the back? You know, my brother sister's cousin. Nobody gives a shit. There's
Yeah,
nobody. They just want to sell their house.
exactly.
They don't need all that poop. You know. And what's funny is, you know, we get caught up in they have to. No, they when you say words like they have to, that's because your ego is telling you you want to jam something down their throat.
Yeah, I think what I'm gathering, what you're really saying is the simple way of doing this. It's a simple business.
Oh my
It's
God.
difficult to keep going, which is actually my next question here, because
Well,
I'm really
it's
liking this
simple, but it's
conversation.
simple, but it's
But
not easy.
it's just not easy, which is on the side of the repetitious boredom that
Yes,
we hear about
absolutely.
doing this process. So how did you get through that when you were grinding it out for all those years? Because that seems to be the biggest thing that I'm hearing with the phone warrior people that we have is, and people, agents that I talk to, it's like, it's not that they don't want to start. Some of them start, then all of a sudden they stop, and then they
Right.
start again, and they stop. And
So,
it's like, yeah,
and that's going to happen anyway.
yeah.
It's just how long they stop for.
Mhm.
So, you know, the way I used to explain it was there's two things is, you know, when I was before I made any real money, I had like a Subaru. And it was the Subaru with the Ford, you know, the four wheel drive wagon, you know. And
Okay.
for me to get for me to get to doing 60 miles an hour would take me probably a three-quarters of a mile. Right. And then all of a sudden I would hit the traffic light and I would have to stop. Whoa. And I have to first gear, second gear, third gear. Then when I made some money, I bought a Mercedes 500 that had like 600 horsepower. And the first day I had it, I got in the car and I was late for like I always was. And I was going to go to the coffee shop. I put my foot down on the pedal and I literally almost drove it through the guy's house across the street because I went 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds or like 3 seconds. And you know, when people get in real estate, they want to do 100 miles an hour from the get go, and they don't realize it takes you have to get in momentum. And every time you stop, like I'm not, I pretend to be on TV. My dad was a reformed alcoholic, and my dad said for years that I can't have one drink. And I would say, why not, Dad? And he goes, well, as soon as you have one drink, you go back to zero and you start over again. And all the momentum and all those years of not drinking, now all of a sudden I start that over again. And he goes, my quality of life right now is far better than when it was trying to get through the momentum phase. So I would challenge people to say, hey, I know you don't want to prospect this morning, but are you willing to go through the momentum phase again? You're almost there. Right. So that's part one. The other thing is, you know, I was introduced by a woman named Jackie Body, who was the president of Weichert on numerous occasions. When I would do they would ask me to do speaking or whatever to the group. And she would always introduce me as the most disciplined guy in the company because I was always there at 7:45 before gym, before anybody, no matter what was going on. And at some point I said to her, I go, you know, I'm not disciplined, right? And she goes, what are you talking about? I go, Jackie, when I was in the Army, I came out of the Army 138 pounds. I'm now 220 pounds and I'm 6 foot. I didn't get taller. I got bigger. I got rounder. I go, that's not really discipline. I go, but what I am is a creature of a habit. And you know this, how long do you have to do something before it becomes a habit? Right.
Yeah.
Hey, 56 hours now.
How many people now this goes back to what Dean said a second ago. How many people get interrupted before they build the habit? And the problem is they don't realize is if you get to day 20, you got to start over again
Right.
before you'll really build the habit. You'll build it, but it just won't be that sustainable.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think
No.
it's as much a business of discipline of a habit. But here's what most people don't know. There's only 40 objections in real estate. There's only 40. It's the oldest industry since like prostitution, and we had to sell them someplace or rent them someplace to do it. So it's actually older than prostitution. Okay. So when you think about it, there's only 40 questions over 100 and something years. And they're the same goddamn questions.
Mhm.
Right. So what did my coaches make me do from 96 till about 2007, guys like me, Jeff Quinton, Jose and Del Rio, right? Ramon Sanchez of California, Al Stasek, Michael Reese, Jay Kinder, Chris Heller, right? I don't know if those names are ringing a bell, but they are the OGs of the real estate industry by far. They're the most skilled people in this industry. And what did we all do? We were accountability partners, and our deal was, I still have the sheet somewhere where I had to send Tony DeCello my handwritten for sale by owner script by 5 o'clock in the morning to his house. And if I didn't, he took one of my $1,000 checks that I made out blank. I gave him 5 checks for $5,000. And he would send it to my biggest competitor, which I had it happen to me, happen once. You might even know the guy, Eric Wagner. Eric Wagner says, hey, by the way, we're going to lunch. I go, oh, great. He goes, by the way, you're paying. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, I'm using this check I got. And on the bottom of the check in the notes, it said, thank you for helping me to build my career. Sean, because Tony made you write that. And by the way, that happens once. You're
never going to do that again.
Yeah. So, but I think if you can get, the other thing is you need to be in a group. Your group, the power of your group is something that I stumbled upon 20 years ago when it was called Skype, and then it became Google. And I literally did exactly what you guys did for the last 10 years of my career. We would get on the phone at 10 o'clock in the morning. Everybody would get on the phone at like 7:45, and we worked virtually when we no longer worked in an office, and because it wasn't profitable to work in an office. So we worked virtually. And what we figured out was the power of the group was really like, bear in mind, I was prospecting with people from if you Google Michael Higdon, he's down in Kentucky. Michael would get on the phone all the time, guys from Florida, guys from California, guys from Canada. Michael in your group, Michael Dougal, his father and me would role play together. And then Dougal got on with us. And we used to tease Dougal. He was like the young guy in the group, and he was a great guy, but we would joke around with him. We'd be like, hey, listen, go tell your dad, go ask your dad to role play with you more. And he was always a champ. He would show up every single day.
Right. And that is the key. So before I forget to ask this question, then just the last thing on this note, on this topic that you're talking about, how much emphasis do you put on your why and your self-motivation to do it, to get through the boredom, to get through the challenges? Is that really a thing, or is it just all the accountability that really you need in order to do it?
I could tell you this, and this is just me, okay? Every time, you can get your back against a wall. You're either motivated by pain or pleasure, right? There's a couple of things about psychology, right? Psychology of people: internal, external, moving away from pain or towards pleasure, right? And then amiable, driver, analytical, expressive, right? And you guys have heard that. I'm assuming you've heard that. What's interesting is the vast majority of people move away from pain. So, and I'm probably one of them. So if for me, Dean, which one of these would you rather not do more of? You could either stand in an air-conditioned office, call some people, let them scream and yell at you every once in a while, and then every once in a while get paid. Or you could be on the breadline and looking for, whatever. So it's really comes down to what's more challenging. And I'm a firm believer, though, for the first 15, I would say first 3/4 of my career, I was driven by grind and pain and get away from and want to go to the next level, right? And then I realized that as I got older, a little wiser, I guess, the things that really made impact on me, and I got to do it again, to be honest with you, now that you've made me think about this. When I bought this house, I had just moved from Jersey City. It was 2011. I became the short sale expert. People were like, how'd you become the short sale expert? Oh my God. I go, that's easy. You have 10 houses, you sell 7, you get stuck with 3, and you have to short sell 3 of your own homes. You become really good at it. You become great at it. right? So at that point in my life, I basically went backwards and started over again. And we were renting a place in the next town over. And I said, here is, let's, I said to my kids, they were pretty young at that point. They're now 17. So that was like, they were like 10 and 4 or 5. I said, okay, if we had the perfect house, what does it look like? And I went on the MLS and I found a house. And it was like the description of the perfect house. And then I found like a drawing of it. And it happened to be this house. Well, then we went and looked at houses and we figured out that this house was the house that we could afford on the place that we could afford it in the town that we wanted to be in. Go figure. I put that on my wall and I said, hey, here's the house I want to buy. I went to work. That month I made $100,000 in commissions, and nobody had done that in Weichert ever in 1 month. But the thing is, I was driven because I needed $60,000 to put down on my new house. Right. And then I did that again. Now that I think about it, every time I've had a dream board or a vision board in front of me, and I had something bigger than me, like your kids are great accountabilities, like to start with. If you tell like my daughter was 4 or whatever, if you tell them that you're going to Disney once you get to a certain level, well, if I do blah, we're gonna take you to Disney. Every day when you walk in the house, that kid's gonna come up to you and go, Dad, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Oh my God, did you do it? Right? Whether you want them to or not. So, but I think you gotta have here's a great video to go watch. It's you guys ever heard of Frank Kern? He's like the OG of the online
internet marketing guy.
Yeah. Look up Frank Kern, Core Influence, it's called. It's about, there's like a hour and a half version. You want to watch like the 10-minute version, and he talks about the perfect day. If you had the perfect day and you had to do it over and over again every single day, like Groundhog Day, and if you didn't, somebody's going to blow your head off. What does it look like? And that when you start drilling down, that will help, I think, come up with a sense of purpose that's more than show up and grind. I mean, you can get good at showing up and grinding. You can't get great.
Absolutely. You're right. And I guess all this great information that's been thrown at us. I mean, I have one final question, which you talked about it indirectly, we talked about it indirectly, but for any new agents, any experienced agents, anybody in general, we talked about scripts, we talked about discipline, we talked about everything, but how do you get good at doing this? Did you role play with other agents? Did you role play with other people? Did you role play on your clients? Like, let's get a nice answer of how to what to do with that.
So, and I'll wrap this up in a bow for you. Is and you guys have heard the Russell Brunson, hook, story, close, right?
Of course.
How to build a 6-figure income in real estate in 90 days or less. Easy. You go from one company to the other. They take 11 of your listings at 800,000 a piece, which is, by the way, I would sell 70% of my listings over 700,000 myself, which was about $350, $400,000 in potential commissions. And I would sell 86% of my listings. So I knew what the number was. And then you get sued for 75,000, and then they hold back another $60,000, and you are carrying about a $32,000 a month monthly nut. That is very inspiring in my book, because you're basically, that's what happened to me. And I woke up one day, it was October 26th, and my assistant and I went into the office and we said, okay, what are you going to do? We're done licking our wounds. And I said, we're going to make 10 listings, 10 sales, make $100,000. And the woman looked at me and she goes, you made 600 last year. Why would you go backwards? I go, no, you don't understand. I'm talking about between now and the end of the year. And she goes, it's October 26th. And my assistant, before I could say anything, my assistant, Abby, who works for your company, by the way, internally now, who was in her 70s at the time, goes, he is my worst kid. And she goes, what are you talking about? He's like my adopted son, and he is my worst kid. He goes, because if he gets pissed off and he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. And he'll do whatever he's got to do it. And everything else to just get out of the way, because he's going to plow over him. And what was that was, I took 20 years of all the coaching, all the training, and distilled it down into one basic succinct plan, which was, the 10X personal success formula. What does that look like? It's based on the modeling of, you guys have heard the Miracle Morning, right? Hal Elrod is actually a friend of mine. He's beat cancer I don't know how many times. He's like a cat. He's got 9 lives. Awesome guy, incredible guy. Starts out in the morning and is sitting quiet. Affirmations, visualization, energy, exercise, right? Reflect and scribe. What is reflect and scribe? Reflect is what grateful for what you did yesterday or the day before. Scribe is writing down that stuff so you remember it. And then, and being able to, it's taken a long time, but we're creatures of energy. We're built on energy. And if you listen to like the hokey people is what I used to call them years ago. Now I actually subscribe to a lot of that stuff. Is, people say people make decisions when they're excited. You have to get your body in motion. You have to be energized, and you have to be energized with the right, gas in the car. If I show up at Rich's team and Rich is screaming at me and throwing things at me because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, how long does that go on? And then I go over to Dean's office, and Dean is like, "Hey, man, listen, you're doing great, but there's still a gap in here. Let's figure out where that gap is, right? And let's figure out how can we close the gap from where you are and where you want to go." And that's the difference of coaching versus grinding. I don't know if does that answer the question?
Yeah. No, I think that's phenomenal answer. This has been actually this is better than I expected, to be honest, that how this is going to go. You have a wealth of knowledge. Well, I kind of expected this to go probably a different way, but the last question.
I think we all did.
Yeah. Well, Sean, and the last question I like asking all of our guests on these podcasts is, if you could take a time machine, going back to your early 20s, mid 20s self, and you can tell yourself one thing of what you know today that you wish you knew back then, what would that thing be?
Simple answer. Simple. You guys know my maniac friend, and a lot of people on your group know a guy named Jeff Quinton. Jeffrey was invited to my wedding. He's just like a lot of other cast characters in that caliber. And when we would go visit Jeffrey, my wife, who was the smartest person I ever met, said, "You're smarter than Jeff. How come he makes like 3 times as much money as you do?" I go, "Oh, well, that's easy." And it took me 20 years to figure it out. Now it's easy. Now I can actually figure it out. So I got into the real estate business because of this thing, right? Which is it's a bicycle lock actually, but it's a patent. I got a patent on my name because I'm one of those guys where if I look at something, I go, "Oh, that process is crap. There's an easier way to do that." The difference between me and Jeff, and had I known this 25 years ago, I would have just did what Jeff did. If you give Jeff a hammer and a chisel and you say, "Jeff, go over there and take that hammer and that chisel and just beat the hell out of that wall until you find somebody who wants to do something," he will take the hammer and the chisel and beat the hell out of the wall until that chisel either breaks or somebody comes up with a better solution and comes up with like a laser and says, "Oh, by the way, here, give me the chisel, take this laser and now try it." Right? With me, they gave me the same hammer and the same chisel. And I went, "Well, first of all, this chisel is dull and this hammer isn't that big. So I'm going to go rebuild this strategy that already works." Like getting on the Phone Warriors group, because we know that the camaraderie of the group will increase our efficiency and actually help us go from where we are, where we want to get to. And it'll increase our efficiency by probably 200 or 300%. By the way, you didn't pay me to say that. I'm telling you from experience, if you put people in your environment, the environment is the most powerful thing in the world. And if you can get them in your group and then get them engaged in your relationship of helping people. And what is the answer to that? Keep it simple, stupid. My biggest downfall was I was smart. I'm a really smart guy. I found out I had like a 1480 on my SATs. Guess what? That doesn't make me rich. It made me poorer. Because I was always trying to figure out a better way of doing it when my competitors, guys like Jeff and guys like Chris Heller, they just put the pedal down. They just said, "Okay, fine, just keep grinding, keep doing what we're doing, keep putting you let us know when you figure out how to fix that thing." And, by the way, they knew it was broke. And I knew, and when I finally figured out how to fix it, I showed up to the office and Dean goes, "Oh, we don't use that crap anymore. We have a different strategy we're using. Go see Rich. He'll tell you." And all it really was a different script.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So-
basically what I'm hearing is just you're to like just
Keep it simple.
Just keep it so simple and don't try to reinvent the wheel over and over again, and just keep on doing what actually works today.
Mike Ferry had a really simple way of putting things. And like I've learned over the years now that I can't use his style of coaching, which I was trained to do, and without really realizing it, because his delivery is not really designed for mass groups of people or HR compliance. you know. But the one thing he would always say is, when your wallet gets to be as big as my wallet, you could tell me how to do it. Until then, just keep doing what I'm telling you to do. And I'm not saying that, from a wallet standpoint, but what I am saying is, God knows you have some of the most successful people in the industry.
Yeah. When
you get to a point that you've exhausted what they're doing to get there, then you can actually have that conversation. I'm in the real estate space, my experience on the phone was legendary. And I don't say that lightly. I earned it. Okay. I have the battle scars to prove it. In the mortgage space, it took me 6 months for me to sit down, shut up, and listen and be humble, because I realized that I wasn't a rocket scientist. I wasn't a superstar in the mortgage space yet. I was in the real estate space, but one is different than the other. So at that point in my career, which was about 2 years ago, for the first 3 months or 4 months of my career in the mortgage business, I did very bad. Why? Because I used my own script. I didn't remember we talked about a minute ago. I created my own script because I thought I was a telephone genius. What I really should have figured out was, hey, I know how to read a script. If you give me the right script, what's the script I should use? So when you go to see Dean and you want to show up and use your own script, and he laughs at you and says, I don't want to hire you. Go see Rich. He'll hire you. But you understand where I'm going with that is.
Yeah.
It's I think that we get caught up in the silver spoon, squirrel. Oh my God, everything you need to know and everything you need to make is right here. Your entire my phone has 27,000 people in it. It's that phone is my phone. If I gave you my phone, it's probably worth a couple $100,000 a year. Because if you just dialed through my phone every year and said, "Hey, Sean told me to call you," and he wanted to let you know I took over his real estate business, you could probably do pretty well on my database.
There you go. That's it, man. I mean, it's powerfully said. And thank you, Sean, for doing this. This was a wealth of information. Hope you guys got a lot of value today. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sean.
You guys rock, man.
All right, cool. So I guess, yeah, you could, perfect, man. Dude, that was fantastic.